Hey, welcome back. So in this tutorial, we're going to start applying damage and working on our health system for our character. And that'll go ahead and feed into our HUD. So there's a few things that we need to do first to get everything kind of set up and make everything work. And we're going to work on that in this tutorial this time. So let me just go ahead and get my head out of the way here and kind of jump into what I'm talking about and do a demo. So this is where we left off with our HUD, right? And if I take a look at the demo project that I worked on before to set all this up, you can see that right here we have this take damage. And if I go into my player, I hit play, up here in the top left-hand corner, you see my health. And if I run into the fire over here, I'm going to take some damage, right? So my health bar goes down. And that is a result of updating our health in our player. So here, you'll see over here, I have a health, and then in my HUD, we're feeding into it where we're getting the health percentage from the player, and then we're dividing it so that it goes actually into our health right here. And this is the function that we're using to do that. So we're going to go ahead and work on this entire process. The other thing we're also going to do is right here, you'll see that we have this function called IsAlive. What this does is this checks to make sure that our player is still alive before anything additional happens, right? So for example, here in Take Damage, we're doing a check first to make sure our player is alive, because if our player is dead, it's not going to take any more damage. And we're also going to go back in and we're going to put it in some of our previous functions that we did for movement, because obviously our players shouldn't be able to jump if we're dead, and we shouldn't be able to stop or move if we're dead, right? So camera look and all these things, we're going to have to go back in and apply some of this to our player. We're going to do this now so that any functions that we create in the future, such as this take damage one here, we'll already have it in. And also when we put in boost and some of the other things that we're going to do, we're going to do a check first to make sure our player is alive. So let's just go ahead and create that and add it in automatically from now on, so we don't have to keep, so we don't have to come back in and apply it in 20 or 30 different places. Not that there's really that many functions for this player, but you get the idea. All right, so let's go ahead and get started on that. We're going to pull up our project. This is where we left off. If we go into our player blueprint and right down in here, the very first thing we're going to do for our project is we're going to go ahead and type in take damage. So we want an event any damage. And you'll see when you type in any damage, the event comes up. This is already a pre-programmed, pre-written program for us in Unreal Engine. We don't have to create it. We don't have to create a custom event to do this. It's already in here. And it basically, anytime our character receives any damage from apply damage, this would automatically read it and apply that damage to our character. Now, go ahead and type in and pull up apply damage, because we're going to come back in and we're going to use this a little bit later to be able to test out this event to make sure that it's working correctly. All right, so we've got that in there, but what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to first create a variable over here. We're going to make this a Boolean. So over here under variables, we're going to hit plus again. And it automatically, because the first one pops up, and if your program is closed like mine was and reopened, we're going to come up with Boolean. Sometimes it'll come up with whatever our last variable was. And in this case, for me, since it's new, starting a new one here, it's going to be a Boolean. And we're going to call this one is dead. Okay, and we're going to just do a check to see if our character is dead. So we're going to go ahead and compile it and save it. So now the next thing we're going to do is we're also going to go up here and we're going to create a function for our player blueprint. We're going to click here and we're going to call this function IsAlive. So we're going to call it whenever we want to check to see if our player is still alive, right? So we're going to take this is dead, we're going to pull it out here, and we're going to get it. We're going to say, see if it's set to be either true or false. And you can see we have a little default value here without it being checked. So that means this is false right now since there's no check mark in here. So is dead is false, so that means we're not dead. So we want to return a not. So we're going to type in not right here. So NOT for not, and this is a Boolean. So we want to find the not Boolean right there. And we're going to need a return node. So if I right-click into the empty space and type in return, I'll end up with an add return node as a choice down here. I'm going to connect this here. And if I just pull this out and drop it right there, it'll give me a little plus, right? Other way of doing it, so if I delete this off of there. So another way of doing it is we can hit the plus symbol over here, and it'll give us a new parameter. We would connect it up in there. We can choose what kind of parameter would be right here by Boolean or float or whatever we want to do, but clicking off and dragging is probably the easiest one to do. And then I get a return value, and I'm going to call this check is alive. So we're going to do a check to see if we're alive. And that should be it. So we're going to go ahead and compile and save it. And if you click on either one of these, it'll give us some choices to set up how this function is set up, okay, for outputs and things like that. So we're going to first check pure right here to make sure that, so this is going to turn it from being that blue. So let me just show you what happens when I do this. All right, I'm going to compile this and go back into my event graph just to do a demonstration. So now if I pull this IsAlive out here, see how it's blue like this? It requires an input and it also gives an output. And the output is going to be to do a check IsAlive, but we have to call it first. Now we don't want to have to do that, right? We want to be able to have it automatically just as we run through this. We call the function IsAlive, the Boolean to do the check. We want to be able to pull back to this and see if it works. And by what I mean to check, so if I pull off of here and type in branch, rather, not bridge, my bad, branch, and you can see that this branch gives us a choice for a condition, true or false. What we want to do is when we call this, we want it to go out and we want it to check to see what this is. We don't want it to just have to be called through here as part of this. We could do it that way, but we don't want to do that. So we're going to change this to pure. So if I go back in to IsAlive, select my return node, I'm going to say it's pure. I also want it to be a constant value. I don't want it to be changed by something else. I want to go in, and this is where the only place that we want it to change is we want it to determine itself, is it dead or alive? So it's going to do this check right here for us. So we're going to make it a constant, okay? Okay, and we're going to force it to be a constant function. We're going to compile and save it. Now if I go back to my event graph, see how it's changed to green? And it doesn't require an input or an output. The only output is to check to see if this condition is true or false, okay? So right now, while our character is alive, it's going to be true, okay? Because, again, this Boolean says we are not dead. If it was checked, it would be true, and that would mean we were dead. Hopefully that makes sense. So now that we've got that, we're going to go ahead and do the next function that we need for this, and we actually need to decrease the health. So the next step is, once we determine that our character is indeed alive, we're going to need another function to decrease health. And we're going to have to create that function ourselves. So right here in the functions, we're going to hit the plus button, and we're going to type this in and call it decrease health. So we're going to decrease health. And we're going to need to create a couple more variables to be able to see what our current health is and set our current health, and also know what our max health is, so we know that we're not exceeding that value, because we're also going to want to be able to add health back in when we do some pickups, right? So we don't want to be able to go over 100%. We want to stop at 100% for our max value for our health, which in this case would be 100, which will equate to 100% when we set that up. So right here for our variables, I'm going to hit the plus symbol, and again, it gave me a Boolean. So I can click here and I can go ahead, and this one is going to be called health. If I can type, there we go, health. I'm going to change this to a float. And I'm going to leave the I closed on this one. Now I need to compile, because over here I can't add anything to it. So if I compile it and save it, now I have a value that I can put in here. And I'm going to put this at 100. That'll be our max setting for our health. The other variable I'm going to want to have in here is max health. So I'm going to add a plus symbol here again. Notice how it came up as a float this time because my last one was a float. And I'm going to say max health. And I'm going to compile it. And I'm going to save it. And I'm going to set my max health at 100. So now I have both of these, and they're both set at 100. But the health we're going to subtract from, and we're going to use the max health to help clamp our float. And what I mean by that is we're going to first pull out our health, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to get a set. So we're going to pull out from here, and we're going to set our health, and we're going to get a return value here to put in that in a minute. And then the next thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to also want a return node. And with the return node, we're going to have this output. Drop it into there, and this is going to be health. So we're going to decrease our health. We're going to have an input that's going to set that up, and then we're going to return that to set our node, and we're going to return that value. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to take out health, and we're going to get whatever our current health is, and right now it's 100. And we're going to also need right here on health, we're going to need to have an input because we're going to remember back here in our event graph, we're setting this up to take damage, and we're going to subtract whatever that damage is from our health. That's the amount that we're going to decrease. So down here, if we're applying damage, see how it says base damage? This amount right here, whatever it's going to be, so if I put 10 in here, and when it returns, it's going to return a damage of 10 for this, and this one, if this was the one that was fired, this damage would be 10, and that's what we're going to subtract from here. So the way we're going to get that is we're going to need to have an input from our decreased health. So right up here where it says inputs, I'm going to hit plus. Maybe. There we go. We're going to turn this into a float. And we're going to just name this damage received. Now we have an input right here for damage received. So we're going to subtract. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to type in sub. I'm going to get a float for subtract right here. And we're going to put our health at the top because this is our health, our current health. And we're going to, whatever damage we receive, we're going to subtract that from our current health. We could have a scenario where if we're getting damaged, we could go into the negative amount. We could also have a scenario where if we're doing pickups, we could go above 100. So what we need to do is we need to set a clamp. If you remember, we used the clamp before. That was going to set our lowest level and our highest level. And anything above that is going to be rounded to whatever our highest or lowest level is. So from here, we're going to pull out and we're going to type in clamp. And we're going to want a clamp float. Right here at the top, clamp float. And our minimum value is going to be 0. And our max value is going to be our max health. So we're going to pull this out and we're going to get health. I'm going to type that in there right there. Connect that up. And this return value is going to be what our health is. So now we have the ability to take damage, subtract it from our current health, output it, clamp it to make sure that we don't go below 0 or above our max health. And then we're going to set our health to a new value. So this will then take on a new value for what our health is currently after we've taken the damage. We're going to compile it, save it. This particular one is going to be, we're not going to make it a pure or a const because we're going to receive an input and we're going to want to put an output. So now let's go back to our event graph. We can grab this decrease health, drag it into here, and we're going to, again, if this is true, so if our character is still alive, we're going to take damage. The damage is going to be whatever the damage applied says it is. So in this case, we could set it for 10 for one thing, like walking into fire or falling off a cliff could be something. And then we're going to take that damage, whatever it is, 10 points perhaps, and reduce our health for that amount. Now we're going to do a check. So this is the output that we're going to do right here. We're going to right click and we're going to get an equals. So if you hold the shift, oh, sorry, that's the plus button. If you just hit the equals button, there we go. We want equal. So this is this isn't, the value is this value, right? So if we get this and we check this value, and it's going to give us a Boolean output, either true or false. So if our health value is 0, then that's true. If it's not 0, it is false. So anything but 0 is going to give us a false. And since we're doing a check for a Boolean, we're going to want a branch here. We're going to take this output, not the whole node, this output. We're going to put it on there. And this is where we're going to take our isDead, and we're going to set it. Because now, if it's 0, and this is true, we're dead. All right, so this is the main part of setting up our health value. And actually, let's go ahead and just check to make sure all this is working before we get into the next piece of it. So what we want to do to make sure that this is working, so we go through all this process. Right now, we don't have anything to immobilize our player. We haven't gone back in and made it so that none of these things use the IsAlive yet. We just want to make sure that everything's working the way it's supposed to. There's actually this really cool little thing called a PrintString, and we can use it during our development. See, so this is development only. It won't show up when we build and ship this. So, but usually you want to make sure that you take them all out. We can go ahead and we can call this PrintString. We can use it for problem solving and checking. So we're going to check to see if it goes through all this process. And then right in here where it says hello, I'm just going to change it to you died. That's the only way we're going to know right now that we actually died. I'm going to compile and save it. And the next thing I need to do is I need to actually set it up so I can take damage. There's nothing in our world right now that's going to damage me. So for temporary, right here, we're going to apply damage. So if I right click here and I hit keyboard, I type in keyboard, and then if I click on this little symbol right here with the SS, if I click on it and select it, up over here I can pick what I want the input key to be. So if I select the keyboard, I'm going to hit K for kill. Right now there's nothing else in my program that's using K. So I'm going to say every time I press K, I give myself 10 points of damage. Okay, and this is right in here so I can see it. We can test it. We actually have to tell this what we're applying the damage to. We could use apply damage for our enemies or something else that's in our game that we want to apply damage to. So we actually have to come in and say, hey, the actor we want to get damaged is ourself. So if we right click in here, we type in self, we can get a reference to self right here in our variables, right? And we can just tie that in right there, compile, save it. And I'm going to change this from 10 to 50. So I have to hit it twice so it doesn't take 10 hits to kill myself. So we can hurry up and do this, right? So if I hit play and I hit K twice, boom, I got you died up in the left-hand corner. That is it for this tutorial. We're going to go ahead and continue on with getting our player set up to be able to take damage and finish out this whole kill system for our player. But it's going to take us several more steps, and I want to try to keep these tutorials between 20 to 30 minutes, and we're right at 20 minutes right now. So we're going to go ahead and stop it, and I'll pick up in the next tutorial the next step for getting our player to be able to take damage and die and get our HUD working. All right. So again, if you liked what you saw, please like this tutorial, like this video, and please make sure you subscribe if you want to continue on following with what we're doing. Again, I'll see you next time. Thanks for playing.